there are a lot of examples as to why or how, let's say this, something's different, something's changed. I mean, nowadays they can't even fall back on the whole COVID stuff, which is what they tried to do. I think right before that whole situation happened, it was already in decline, but you saw a lot of people be giving it out. They were giving it out. A lot of companies were giving it out. They were able to hide behind the fact that, well, yeah, people are less enthusiastic about it, but look, the theaters are shut down, all that sort of stuff. You can't really fall back on. I think there's just a lack of interest these days. People aren't really as interested in this stuff as they used to be. That's just what it boils down to. People aren't as enthusiastic about the projects that are coming out by way of the legacy stuff, right? And I, of course, welcome that. And I'll give my reasons, I guess, a little later here afterwards as far as why I think this is a good thing. But what it looks like, as IndieWire is even reporting, that this past Thanksgiving weekend box office was the worst Thanksgiving weekend in box office history. Wakanda Forever is still number one. Strange World tank, but here's what's important: the 3-day Thanksgiving box office weekend came to 95 million in 2019. This weekend's total was 181 million. In 2018, 216 million. For all of 2019, only 4 weekends fell short of 100 million. The last time Thanksgiving weekend grossed under 100 million was almost 30 years ago, and that's Thanksgiving 1994. We saw a three-day weekend of 94.5 million. So it's just they're not doing what we already talked about. Strange World and how it's set to lose like $100 million or something like that. These guys are losing a lot of money on these projects. We know with Disney, even with their streaming stuff. I mean, it's funny people talk so much about, well, it's because of that. They'll try to blame it on the streaming. Well, Disney's been losing money off of that too. They got $1.47 billion in the last quarter. That's like double of what they lost the previous quarter. Since Disney Plus has been launched, they've lost $8 billion or something like that. So it's just not working. And the trend of the ticket sales has been falling down anyway. I think we get so caught up in the numbers of like the box office numbers, and that's it. But comparatively speaking, the tickets are less in terms of the sales. So yeah, if you're charging more, you're going to see that, right? If you're charging more for a product, you're going to make more money if you are selling less, if that makes sense. And that's what often has happened, is that there's less tickets being sold, but they cost more, so it makes the box office look right. But when you look at even with the last two Black Panthers, even if this one made more money, it still didn't sell as many tickets. So as far as butts in the seats, as far as individuals that are willing to pay for these products, it's still less people. It's just what it is. There's less enthusiasm. Something's happened, okay? It's simple and plain as that. Something has happened and people are less enthusiastic about it. Now, you can be one of those guys that sits up here and gripes and says, or let's say this, you try to make it appear as if, well, this is normal. So your immediate mind is to say, well, this is the way that it is because of X external factor, X external factor, X external factor, whatever. Just start blaming stuff. But sometimes it's not as complicated. Sometimes the product is inferior to maybe it was before, and you haven't got people enthusiastic enough to want to purchase it. Sometimes it's that simple. It's not a rocket science. It's just that, well, people don't really want to see it, don't really want to purchase it. That's not to say they aren't let's say interested in the industry. You know, doesn't mean that. It just means maybe in the products that you're putting out, they'll find something else. And that's fine. We've talked about this in the comic book industry. When you start to really look at the nitty gritty of the numbers and you start to look at like unit sales and how they're, comics made all this money, right? And then you start looking at the unit sales and you're like, wait a minute. And then you remember that, well, they just upped their prices. DC upped their prices on comic books and stuff. Maybe that has a lot to do with how much money they're bringing in, because if you look at the sales, according to the same exact sources, they're selling less. Like, they're selling less in terms of individual units of, let's say, a book. Same thing's happening in Hollywood. Now, the reason why I'm like, oh, well, it's good. It's because, look, yeah, I'm an alternative. I'm a creative that's looking to be part of like the parallel economy. But I think the parallel economy, as we spoke about on my stream earlier, there's so many things that's wrong with what exists right now that offers opportunity outside of just the content itself. The business aspect of it needs to be completely upended. When you can see something, for example, like with Hollywood, Strange World is not $180 million animation, but reportedly that's how much they spent. Now, what levels of red tape, or who's getting, of what level of overhead, who's getting overpaid for these projects to be produced? Where's the creativity being stifled at? Like, this is stuff that you get to address as an alternative. You can say they're doing it a way that I would not prefer that it go. And this benefits not just the customers, but it benefits employees. It benefits a lot. There's a lot that doesn't make sense. I've learned this as a business owner in the comic book space. There's a lot of what people do and nobody really knows why. It's just, well, this is how everybody's done it. The distribution game was one of the main ones where I was like, well, that doesn't really make sense. With the internet and social media and its level of why is everybody depending on previews for this? None of that makes sense to me, so I just didn't do it. It all needs to be upended, and that's the beautiful thing about the parallel economy, is that it's giving people an outlet to be creative, not just with the content. So not just in this case, let's say a movie. Maybe in how the movie is made, that can also be changed for the better. Catch up with the times, because all of this, for the most part, is based on an old, archaic model, and it's built on a house of cards. Wherever you're viewing the content, I appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, you may be interested in my comic book company, Rippaverse Comics. Our first book and campaign, ISOM #1, brought in $3.7 million with tens of thousands of satisfied customers. Visit Rippaverse.com to check out our store and stay up to date with the latest campaigns from one of the hottest new comic book companies. Also, my first big step towards a parallel economy was the development of my personal website, ericdjuly.com. This entirely replaced my Patreon. Now, if you enjoy this content, please consider becoming a member over at the website. We have an ever-expanding list of perks for various membership tiers, a forum, and a phone app. Some of these perks will even benefit you if you're fans of the Rippaverse. Anyway, I appreciate you so much for being a supporter and or customer. I even got a little love for my haters.